The room buzzed with a silence that felt heavier than the chains around his wrists. Logan Carter sat in the cold metal chair, his hands gripping the armrests as if they could keep him grounded. The prison walls had seen their fair share of men in their final moments, but none had made a request quite like his. The guards shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. Some had seen hardened criminals break down before their execution, begging for mercy, for forgiveness, for a second chance. But Logan, he had only one request. "I want to see my dog," he had said, his voice steady. The warden hesitated. It wasn't common, but it wasn't against the rules either. Maybe it was the way Logan spoke, calm, almost too calm, that made the request impossible to refuse. An old mutt named Shadow had been his only companion since childhood, the one living thing that had never left his side. It was a strange request, sure, but considering what was coming next, what harm could it do? So they brought Shadow in. The old black Labrador trotted into the sterile, lifeless chamber, his tail wagging weakly. Logan's face softened for the first time in weeks. He reached out, his fingers trembling as they brushed against the dog's fur. The execution chamber had never felt warmth before, but in that moment it almost did. Then something changed. Shadow stopped wagging his tail. His body tensed. His ears pricked forward, eyes locking onto something or someone behind Logan. A low growl rumbled from his throat, deep and primal. The guards stiffened, their hands hovering near their belts. This wasn't normal. Dogs didn't react like this, especially not in front of their owners. Logan frowned, turning his head slightly. "What is it, boy?" he murmured. Shadow's growl grew louder, his teeth bared. The air in the room suddenly felt colder. One of the guards shifted uneasily. "What the hell is wrong with that dog?" he muttered under his breath. The warden stepped forward. "Maybe we should." But before he could finish, Shadow lunged. Not at Logan, not at any of the guards, but at something no one else could see. The room erupted into chaos. Officers scrambled back, chairs screeched against the floor, and Logan, for the first time that night, looked truly afraid. Not of the electric chair. Not of death. But of whatever Shadow had sensed. Because the dog wasn't barking at nothing. Something was in that room. Something none of them could see. And in that moment Logan knew. His time wasn't up just yet. Not in the way they had planned. The guards hesitated, hands hovering near their weapons. But no one knew what to do. The air felt wrong, thick, heavy like the pressure before a storm. Shadow stood rigid, his fur bristling. His growl deepening into something almost unnatural. Logan had seen his dog react to strangers before, but this was different. This wasn't fear. This was something else. "Get that damn dog under control," one of the guards snapped, his voice tight. Logan barely heard him. His eyes flickered to the corners of the room, the empty spaces behind the guards, the reflection in the thick glass separating them from the observers. He felt something too. Presence. It was like being watched, but not by the men standing around him. Something unseen. Something cold. Shadow barked, a sharp, vicious sound that sent a shiver down Logan's spine. Then, as suddenly as he had started, the dog backed away, tail tucked between his legs. His entire body trembled. Logan had never seen Shadow act like this before. Not even as a puppy, not even during the worst nights of his life. The warden's voice cut through the tension. "Enough. Take the dog out." A guard hesitated before stepping forward, reaching for Shadow's collar. But the dog snarled, snapping at the man's hand. The guard stumbled back, swearing under his breath. No one moved. Logan's heart pounded. "Shadow," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Come here, boy." For a moment the dog didn't move. Then slowly he turned to Logan, his wide, dark eyes filled with something almost human. Fear, maybe even sorrow. He stepped closer, pressing his nose against Logan's hand. His breath warm but shaky. And then Logan heard it. A whisper. Indistinct. Almost like a breeze through an open window. But there were no windows in the execution chamber. No way for the wind to reach them. His blood ran cold. The guards didn't react. No one else seemed to hear it. But Logan did. And Shadow did. The dog whined, his ears flattening. His entire body pressing closer to Logan as if seeking protection. The warden exhaled sharply. "We're done here." He turned to the guards. "Remove the dog and proceed." Logan clenched his fists. A cold sweat formed on his brow. He wanted to say something to stop them, but what could he say? That the air felt wrong. That his dog was afraid of something invisible. That he had heard a voice where there was no one to speak. No one would believe him. One of the guards grabbed Shadow's leash and pulled hard. The dog resisted, claws scraping against the tile floor. His body jerking back toward Logan, but he was outnumbered. Another guard helped, dragging him toward the door. Shadow fought, barking wildly. His cries echoing in the chamber. And just before they pulled him out, Logan swore he heard something else. Quiet, chilling voice. Right behind him. Not yet. Logan's breath hitched. His fingers curled around the armrests of the electric chair as a shiver ran down his spine. He wanted to turn around to see if someone was standing behind him, but his body refused to move. The weight of unseen eyes pressed against him, thick and suffocating. The guards didn't react. No one else had heard it. Only him. Shadow's desperate barking faded as they dragged him down the hallway. The heavy door slammed shut, sealing the execution chamber once more. The room felt emptier without his dog, but the air still carried the same suffocating presence. Logan swallowed hard. He had faced death before, stared it down, even welcomed it, but this was different. The warden cleared his throat. "Let's proceed." The guards moved around him, securing the straps across his arms and legs. Their hands were steady, mechanical, like they had done this 100 times before. Logan barely registered their movements. His mind was still trapped in that whisper. Not yet. What did it mean? A memory surfaced. His mother's voice from long ago, warning him about the way shadows moved in empty rooms, about the cold spots in their old house that made the lights flicker. He had laughed it off as a child, but now he wasn't so sure. The lead executioner, a tall man with tired eyes, moved toward the control panel. Logan watched as he adjusted the switches, his fingers hovering over the button that would send thousands of volts through his body. For the first time, real fear gripped him. Not of dying, but of what came next. The air shifted again. The tiny hairs on Logan's arms stood up. The lights flickered just once, but long enough for a guard to glance up at the ceiling. Then the whisper returned. This time it wasn't behind him. It was inside his head. "You shouldn't be here." Logan's eyes darted to the two-way mirror in front of him. Behind the glass, witnesses sat in eerie silence, their faces blurred by the reflection of the cold, sterile room. But something was wrong. He focused on the glass, scanning each observer. A judge, the victim's family, a journalist. All expected. But in the far corner, barely visible, stood a figure that didn't belong. It was tall, impossibly thin, its face lost in the dim lighting. Logan's pulse hammered. He blinked, and for a split second, he saw something else staring back at him. His own reflection, but not quite right. His face was there, but his eyes were empty. Dark. Hollow. Like he wasn't really inside his own body anymore. The flickering lights dimmed again. A guard cursed under his breath. The warden frowned, signaling for them to continue. Logan wanted to scream. Wanted to tell them to stop. But before he could say a word, the power cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. The sudden silence was even louder than the hum of the machines that had been moments away from ending Logan's life. The guards cursed, their footsteps shuffling as they reached for flashlights. Someone knocked over a chair. The emergency lights should have kicked in immediately, but they didn't. The air felt heavy, thick with something unseen. Logan's breath came fast, shallow. He couldn't see, but he could feel. The presence that had been lingering before was no longer distant. It was close now. right next to him. A slow creak echoed through the chamber, the sound of metal shifting. Logan's fingers twitched. His arms were still strapped to the chair, but something was wrong. The restraints, tight just moments ago, suddenly felt loose, like they were being undone. A cold breath brushed against his ear. Time's almost up. Logan's entire body stiffened. He wasn't imagining this. Something was here. Something that shouldn't be. The guards fumbled in the dark, their flashlights flickering as they tried to regain control of the situation. A beam of light swept across the room and stopped, hovering, shaking slightly. "Who the hell is that?" one of the guards muttered. Logan couldn't see what they were looking at, but he knew. The figure. The one from the glass. A second later the flashlight died. Another followed. One by one, the lights failed until the room was in total darkness again. Then the scream started. Not from Logan. Not even from the guards. From somewhere else. A deep, hollow wail filled the chamber, stretching through the walls, echoing down the prison corridors. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was something far worse. The room grew colder. Logan could see his breath now, short puffs of mist in the darkness. A metallic clang rang out as something heavy hit the floor. A guard. A chair. Logan couldn't tell. Then footsteps. Low. Deliberate. Moving toward him. His pulse thundered in his ears. He struggled against the restraints, his hands slipping free with unnatural ease. He didn't have time to question how. He just knew he had to move. The power flickered back for half a second, just long enough for Logan to see. The figure, standing inches away. Its face was nothing but shadow, an empty void where features should be. But its hand, long, skeletal, was reaching for him. The lights cut out again. A whisper, this time so close it felt like it came from inside his own mind. "Run." The alarms blared. Red emergency lights bathed the room in a hellish glow. Guards scrambled, their faces twisted in confusion and terror. And Logan Carter, a man who should have been dead, was no longer in the chair. Chaos erupted. The guards shouted over the blaring alarms, their eyes darting across the room, searching for Logan. But he was gone. Not just out of the chair, gone. The heavy straps lay open, untouched. The doors were still locked. No one had entered or exited. And yet, the man who had been seconds from death had vanished into thin air. The warden's face twisted in shock. "Find him. Now." Flashlights swept through the chamber, cutting through the pulsing red glow. But Logan wasn't in the room anymore. He was somewhere else. Logan felt weightless, like he was floating or falling. The alarms and shouting voices faded, replaced by a deep silence that pressed against his ears. His breath came in quick, sharp bursts, but he wasn't sure if he was breathing at all. He reached out, but there was nothing. No floor beneath his feet, no walls around him. Just endless darkness stretching in every direction. Then a voice. Not the whisper from before. This one was different. Louder. Familiar. Logan. His body tensed. His mind fought against the name, against the recognition clawing at the edges of his memory. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. He turned, though he wasn't sure how, and saw a figure standing in the void. His blood ran cold. It was him. Not a reflection. Not a shadow. It was him, down to the last scar on his knuckles, the same prison uniform, the same bewildered expression. But the other Logan's eyes weren't his own. They were wrong. Dark, empty, stretching into something endless. The other Logan smiled, a slow, unnatural curve of the lips. "You were never supposed to die here," he said, his voice echoing in the space between them. "Not like this." Logan's pulse pounded in his ears. "Who are you?" The smile didn't fade. "You already know." Logan shook his head. "Whoa. This isn't real. I was just," he swallowed. He didn't know what had just happened. One moment he was strapped to the chair and the next. "You were taken," the other Logan said, as if hearing his thoughts. pulled out before they could finish it. Because they don't decide when your time is up. Logan's stomach twisted. Then who does? The air around him rippled. The darkness shifted like something moving just beyond sight. The space between him and the other Logan thinned. You, the figure said. Or me. The alarms suddenly returned, loud and distorted. The prison, the execution chamber, the voices. They snapped back into place around him, but something was off. The guards were running, but their faces were blurred. The warden was shouting, but the words were warped. The red emergency lights flickered, and Logan saw something in their glow. A reflection. But this time it wasn't his own. And it was staring right at him. The reflection in the glass twisted. Logan's breath caught as the figure looking back at him wasn't him. Not anymore. The face was his, but the eyes, they weren't human. Dark voids stretched deep, pulling him in. A shudder ran through his body. Something wasn't right. The room around him blurred, the walls warping like heat rising off pavement. The guards moved in slow motion, their voices distant and distorted. It was like he was caught between two places at once. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body refused to move. Then the other Logan, the one from the void, stepped forward. You don't get it, do you? His voice was calm, almost amused. You were never supposed to be here. I was. Logan's chest tightened. The restraints on the electric chair. The whispers. Shadow's warning. He had felt it all along. Something had been wrong since the moment he made his last request. He wasn't the one meant to die. The world around them flickered again, the execution chamber splitting in and out of focus. Logan felt a pull, like invisible hands were dragging him backward. His other self just watched, head tilting slightly. You're in the wrong place, the figure said. But don't worry. We can fix that. A surge of cold rushed through Logan's body. His vision blurred, colors bleeding together. Panic clawed at his throat. He tried to fight, to hold on to something, anything, but there was nothing solid to grasp. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything snapped back into place. The lights in the execution chamber flared on. The alarms cut out. The guards stood frozen, confused, as if nothing had happened. And Logan was still in the chair. His heart pounded. Had he imagined it? Had it all been in his head? The warden cleared his throat, glancing at the guards. Let's get this over with. The lead executioner reached for the switch. Logan's breath came fast and uneven, his body rigid. Then the door burst open. A frantic guard stumbled in, face pale. Wait! The room froze. The guard held up a piece of paper, his hands shaking. The governor, he called. A last-minute appeal. He swallowed. Logan Carter's sentence has been overturned. Silence. Logan's body sagged in shock. His mind spun, unable to process the words. He was free. The guards exchanged glances. The warden exhaled sharply before nodding. Unstrap him. The restraints were undone. Logan's hands trembled as he rubbed his wrists, his body still buzzing from everything that had just happened. The door opened again, and a familiar figure stepped in. Shadow. The dog ran straight to him, pressing against his legs. Logan knelt, running his hands through the fur, grounding himself. Shadow looked up at him with wide, knowing eyes. And behind them, in the reflection of the glass, the other Logan stood watching, smiling. See you soon. Logan's hands shook as he gripped Shadow's fur, his heart still hammering in his chest. The room around him was no longer a blur of confusion and fear. It was real, solid. He was alive. He should have felt relief, but a cold weight pressed against the back of his mind. He slowly stood, his legs unsteady, as the guards hesitated. No one spoke. They weren't sure what to do now that the execution had been stopped at the last second. The warden rubbed his temples before finally sighing. Get him processed for release. Those words should have brought comfort, but Logan barely registered them. His eyes flickered back to the glass. The reflection was normal again, Just him and the empty chair behind him. The other Logan was gone. But he knew what he saw. He knew it hadn't been a trick of the light or his imagination. Shadow whined, nudging his leg as if sensing his unease. Logan forced himself to move, following the guards out of the chamber. His mind still racing. How had this happened? Why had the governor called at the last moment? Why had everything gone dark just before the execution? And most of all, who or what had taken his place in that void? The process of being released felt like a dream. Papers signed. Clothes changed. His name was called, but it barely felt like his own anymore. The prison doors opened, and the cold night air hit him like a wave. It smelled different, fresh, alive. Shadow stayed close to him, his loyal companion, the only thing in this world that still felt real. As he stepped outside, Logan paused. Something made him turn back just for a second. The prison stood behind him, dark and quiet under the glow of the streetlights. The same building where he had spent years awaiting his end. But as he looked up at the small, high window of the execution chamber, a chill ran through him. A silhouette stood there, watching. Logan didn't need to see the details to know who it was. The figure didn't move, didn't wave, didn't call out. Just stood. And then, as a truck rumbled past on the road between them, it was gone. Shadow barked, as if urging him forward. Logan exhaled, forcing himself to turn away. He had been given a second chance. One he didn't fully understand, but one he wasn't going to waste. As he walked down the empty road, the city lights in the distance, a thought settled deep in his bones. He had escaped death. But he wasn't sure if he had escaped something else. And somewhere in a place he couldn't see, someone or something was still waiting. Maybe it always would be.